Without trades, like, we're not going to grow America. Like, we're not going to continue to grow. We're not going to continue to excel. And per capita, as I was looking at some of those stats earlier, you know, we had 500,000 welders in 1990. Today in the U.S., we're right at 430,000 welders. So we're actually 70,000 less welders, but our population has grown over 100 million in that time span. So there's a huge gap that we're seeing. Yeah. Just in our welders in general, and our mechanics are not far behind it.
I think, you know, industry-wide or in any industry today, there's a huge gap in trades. There was a push years ago for everyone to go to college and get higher education and do all these things, and you got a sense of entitlement from that generation. Now we have a huge gap in trades like welders, mechanics, even carpentry, electricians, all these things. I think that that we really, you know, when I say it's forgotten, it's not forgotten. I think that it was just overlooked over the last few years, right? And now what we're seeing with this boom in industries like, or in projects like LNG projects, or just construction overall, data centers, anything, there's a huge gap. And there's a generation of, I don't want to say entitlement, because I don't want to insult anybody out there, but there's a generation of people who are told one thing. They were told, go to school and get a degree, or maybe get a master's degree, and you're promised this career and your path is set. And that's not the case. And what we have now, like what we've experienced at RWN, has been, you know, we have a group of guys guys and girls, right, who are these you know, 40, 50-year-old generation that are, they understand what it means to build a quality product. They understand the why behind they do what they do, behind what they do. And then you have a generation of people coming in, and, you know, maybe this is like, you know, early to late 20s, maybe 30s, early 30s coming in, that they just know, or they come in and think that they're an A mechanic or a top tier welder or all these things, right? Because they watch some YouTube videos, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? The new generation has, there's some value in that. So what I'm saying is you have the older generation of people who really understand why quality in a product matters. And then you have, and why they do the things they do and have the habits that they have, and they really understand, or they really know what it means to the end user, because they live through those experiences of having of callbacks and getting work sent back to them. And I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Well, I'll help you now.
Yeah, help me out.
So you're obviously talking about my generation, the millennial generation, and I know coming into it, you know, just a farm boy out of Tennessee, and like grew up on a farm, worked my butt off for my grandpa, my dads, my uncles, and all of that. And I knew getting a job out of high school and watching some of my friends go off to college and do some of the things, I always felt kind of like I was that roughneck guy that was just a mechanic, just a greasy guy that went to work, busted my butt every day in the sun, in the field. But the reality is like, as I watched myself grow through my career, starting out as a mechanic at 19 years old, some of my friends went off to college at the time I was 24, 25 years old. As a mechanic, I was making more than almost every one of my friends that had bachelor's degrees and master degrees. Like, I didn't get to go to school, and I didn't have the means to be able to go to college for 4 years. I had a family to take care of. I had a son at a very young age, and I started my career, and that's what I did. I went, and as I continued to grow through, I watched some of these guys that thought that having a bachelor degree and a master's degree, that degree would carry them above someone else that had just the work ethic I had. And so I think the millennials, a lot of the people my age and some of the guys that I grew up with, they tend to not have a work ethic, and I know we joke about common sense a little bit, but they focus so hard on getting master's degrees and things like that, you know, there is a place, there is a time for having certain degrees for certain careers that they're chasing, and I appreciate and respect everyone doing that. But being a tradesman and growing up in the industry and being a mechanic and knowing how to weld and just knowing how to make things happen, it kind of got lost over the last couple decades. And what's fun to watch now is you watch the Gen Z generation, as they call it, and you watch those group of people come in, and they're actually coming back into these trades, and you're seeing a lot of these younger people in this Gen Z generation that are really looking at getting back into.
It's a revival.
It certainly is a revival, and it's fun to see. We had a couple decades worth of a gap, which, you know, if you look at most companies today, you have your 50-year-olds, your 40-year-olds, your 60-year-olds, that group, and then you got all these younger 20-year-olds, and it was fun. Like at our last job, we watched a couple guys come in, younger guys, and they really worked their tail off, and we've watched quite a few of them excel pretty rapidly into management level positions without any sort of college education. So I'll say, just working your tail off and getting into a trade doesn't mean that you don't have an opportunity to excel in those companies. I did it. Like,
I did it.
You did it. I don't want to name drop a bunch of people, but I can think of a bunch of younger kids that are in their younger 20s right now that I'm watching grow, and I'm watching how fast that they're actually coming up into some of these companies.
Well, not to stop you short there, but that's the difference, right? So I think it's finding your passion, right? And figuring out what you have the aptitude for and really embracing it, you know? And I think that you have a new generation of people coming out now that they're not being told, hey, you have to go to college, or hey, that I see it, and I'm hoping it comes faster, even faster than it's coming, but there's less sense of entitlement out there, right? So you have a generation of people that what's cool, and what I've seen so far, I saw it at our old job. You had some guys that were the guys that learned from the school of hard knocks and came up working out in the field and probably failed at some jobs and learned from those failures. And now you have a generation of guys that are watching YouTube videos, right? But that's a great thing, right? Now, you know, what they can really do is embrace technology and really get up to speed a whole lot faster. And,
just being resourceful, right?
Yeah,
like
just
find your resources, use your resources. Because when I was growing up on a farm, right, like we didn't have a computer to hook up to a tractor when something broke. Like you had to figure it out. You had to process of elimination. You had to actually understand mechanics to figure it out. Now some of the mechanics nowadays, like if you could use a computer, you could be one of the top mechanics.
100%.
But that's because the way the technology has evolved over the years, everything's become more electronic. So you don't necessarily have to be the greasy guy in the shop that's really diving into all of the things like we used to have to do to be a successful, good mechanic. And to be honest with you, like you and I know it, like you look at mechanics and welders nowadays, they actually start out at a higher pay than most of your office staff. And so some of these people are just looking for a job to come in as an inside salesperson, or someone just looking for any sort of job that they can get to get into the office, to not be outside working in the sun all day. And those guys are starting at half the pay as some of these tradesmen that are starting out at entry-level positions. So, you know, just becoming a tradesman and understanding what you do, and I'll elaborate a little bit more. One thing that has benefited you and I a ton, I believe, is knowing that we were able to start in the trade and start in the trenches and understand every bit of the business as we grew up. It's helped us in our career today because we didn't skip all of those steps. We understood what the mechanics in the shop needed to be successful. We understood what the truck drivers needed. We understood every part of the business because we've been in it. We've worked side by side with those guys. We've been in the trenches on sewer bypass jobs. We've been in the trenches at, I can think of an Iowa project I was on where we worked 26 hours straight on a project. And, we had everyone from the managers there to the district manager to the truck drivers to the mechanic. Everybody was there turning wrenches, doing their thing. Understanding the business like that and being part of the business has really helped us excel. So being a tradesperson today obviously is becoming a cooler thing with our Gen C guys. And it's fun to watch, as you mentioned earlier, the revival and seeing these people understand how important trades are, because without trades, like, we're not going to grow America. Like, we're not going to continue to grow. We're not going to continue to excel. And per capita, as I was looking at some of those stats earlier, we had 500,000 welders in 1990. Today in the U.S., we're right at 430,000 welders. So we're actually 70,000 less welders, but our population has grown over 100 million in that time span. So there's a huge gap that we're seeing just in our welders in general, and our mechanics are not far behind it. They're right there. Right. They're the same.
I think that statistic would probably stay true with most trades, right? I mean, I would imagine are similar. Not necessarily identical, but similar, right? I think it is cool to see this revival or rebirth of the tradesmen. And the coolest thing, like tying in technology to that and getting people up to speed faster, I think that the people that want to work and want to do it are going to do that, right? They're going to be those self-motivated people. You're going to have a whole lot. I think this next generation coming up, I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that think it's like a lost generation, right? I think that we're going to be surprised at what comes out of the next generation, because they're able to act so fast and learn so fast, and the ability to do things. I think what's cool too, and I'll say this about RWN walking in, like, we took this thing on. We have a pretty good mix of that. We have some guys that understand what it means to just grind, right? They came from the school of hard knocks, and we have a pretty good group of young people that are coming over. They're able to learn fast, and they're talented guys, right? We have some really talented people. We talked a little bit in the last video we made about walking into a team and the pride they took and what they did, and how we're blessed to have walked into that, right? And I think that's a big piece of it, man. We have a really good mix and a really good culture of people that I'll say hold one another accountable, right? They all want to work really hard. They all take pride in what they do, but we have some guys that are just they go above and beyond and pick things up quicker and understand the why behind the need, right? And that's important, man. I think that's what was missing maybe the last 20 years or so.
Yeah, and I'll say just having the right leadership. I've said it to you as a friend. I've said it to other people. I was in a position in Tennessee where I think that I may have stayed in that same position for 10 years because the leadership wasn't there, and they didn't recognize the talented people in some of those trades, and simply making a personal move down to Louisiana with the right leadership and having the right people above us, they recognize the talent that were there. That's one thing that coming into this I've always wanted to be great at, is I knew that having the right leader in place, and I did have the right leader, and I think you and I can both agree we had the right leader that helped us throughout our career. Sometimes, it wasn't always fun, some of our sit down talks.
I always had fun with them.
Well, it was fun, but sometimes you wanted to do it your way, and I wanted to do it my way. And he kind of gave us the hard talks of the right way. And so having the right leader with the right tradesman underneath you, like it's fun to watch some of these guys excel, and it's fun watching some of these younger generation come in and want to grow, but they know that, like, starting down here, this isn't the end, right? Like, I'm not a welder for the next 30, 40 years. I don't have to be. If I want to be, I can be, But if I want to be the next person, I remember when I was 23, 24 years old going, man, I just want to be a service manager when I'm 30 years old. And then when I was 24, I was a service manager. And then I was like, man, I want to be a branch manager when I'm 30 years old. And then I remember, next thing you know, at 26, I was one of the youngest service branch managers at our old company.
A lot of things you just said hit home. You know, you start in an industry as a young person, right? And you have these, that's not a rite of passage thing. It's really like these just moments. Like I remember some of these moments. I remember where I was. I remember the conversation I had when it clicked. You know what I'm talking about? Like I remember you said something about you know, you were a mechanic or you could be a welder for this long, but you had the right leadership around you, right? And I remember, you know, I got into this business, and we're gonna go back to, it's really easy to get back into talking about stuff like this because it means a lot, right? But I was gonna be a sales guy. That's what I was gonna be. But then it became so much more than that. It became, I wasn't a guy that went to college. I had some college, right? But I didn't, what I knew about myself is I was passionate when I believed in something. I would work harder than anyone around me, and I wanted people around me that did the same thing. And I remember being a sales guy, and I was that like cocky young guy, right? That was gonna just conquer the universe. And I got humbled pretty quick. It was the first time in my life in any job that I'd ever gotten humbled. And, but you know what I did, man, and what I think was that little, we talked about that lost generation or that 20-year gap. There's a gap there in people who just, they didn't know what it was like to get humbled, right? And to bounce back and be resilient, right? And I think that you and I both have a story that's a little bit of that, right? There's some resilience in there. There's some, like, hell, we made a bunch of mistakes, but we learned and we bounced back and we were successful in what we did. And what's cool, I'm gonna relate that to RWN because, man, it's the same story, you know? Here we are in a company who, man, maybe struggled at times, but man, the people never stopped believing. The culture's always been there, and we just came in and added to that, right? And now we're, you know, I'll tell you, this whole little chat wasn't about this, but it's a cool story. It's an inspiring story, right? We're gonna take this thing to the next level. And I don't know, have fun thinking about it and talking about it, right? More to come there, but.